We continue now at the top of Daf Beis Amud Aleph in Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf Tube. This is the beginning of Meseches Menachos. The Mishnah says, Kol ha-menachos shenikmitzu shelo lishman, all carbon minchas, flour offerings, that the kometz, the fistful, is taken shelo lishman, not for its sake, keshero, so that offering is still kosher, ela shelo olu lebayil l'shem chova, however, they don't fulfill the obligation of the owner. Chutz mi minchas chote, with the exception of the minchas chote, we'll see Rashi in a moment, uminchas kenos, and the minchas kenos, and we'll see Rashi in a moment. The Mishnah continues, minchas chote u minchas kenos. When it comes to the minchas chote and the minchas kenos, shekamsan shelo lishman, there if the kmitza of the fistful is taken shelo lishman, not for the sake of that carbon, nasan bekli, he places it in a kli, v'halach v'hikter shelo lishman, and he goes and he burns it, not for the sake of the offering, o lishman v'shelo lishman, or initially it is for the sake, but then not for the sake of the offering, o shelo lishman v'lishman, or in the reverse order, first it's shelo lishma, it's not for its sake, and then it's lishma. In those cases, psulos, it is disqualified. Ketzad lishman v'shalo lishman, what's the example of doing it lishman and shalo lishman? That would be l'shem minchas chote, he does it for the sake of a minchas chote, u l'shem minchas nadava, and then he has in mind, for the sake of a minchas nadava, a donated karban mincha. And the reverse order, shalo lishman v'lishman, where first it's shalo lishman and then lishman, that would be l'shem minchas nadava. First he has in mind that it's a minchas nadava, a donated karban mincha, l'shem minchas chote, and then he has in mind that it is for the sake of a minchas chote. And Rashi explains, Kol ha-menachos shenikmitzu shelo lishman, all carbon minchas which the kometz is taken shelo lishman, kagon, for example, shehisnadev minchas marcheshes, let's say the person voluntarily donates a mincha marcheshes, vehevia v'kamsa ha-kohen, he brings it, and the kohen takes the kometz, v'amar, and he says, hareini kometz l'shem machavas, he says he has in mind for a different kind of carbon mincha, minchas machavas, he's taking the kometz for that would be a situation of shelo lishman, not for the sake, not having in mind for that particular kind of carbon mincha. So kasheros, it is kosher, v'komtzon niktar, and you would burn that kometz, you would burn that fistful on the mizbeach, v'shirei nacholin, and the remainder of that carbon mincha would be eaten. Ela shelo alu l'baylim l'shem chova, however, it will not satisfy the obligation of the owner, to lo yotzi yedei nidro, meaning to say he's not going to fulfill his obligation, his neder obligation. He made a vow to bring a certain kind of mincha, let's say a minchas marcheshes, and now what was had in mind was l'shem machavas, and therefore he's not going to fulfill that neder. V'tzarech l'havi acheres l'shem marcheshes, he's going to need to bring another one as a minchas marcheshes, chutz mi minchas chote, with the exception of a minchas chote, kagon ahid metame mikdash. For example, there's a mincha that you bring if you're metame mikdash, if you make the mikdash impure, you go in when the person goes in when he's tamei. T'chsiv, as it's written, b'vayikravim lo sasek yadol l'shtei sorim, so that's a variable carbon chatos, and so therefore if the person does not have enough money, he's going to bring a carbon mincha, that's the minchas chote. And Rashi continues, minchas kenos refers to minchas sota, that's the carbon mincha that is brought by the sota. Shim kamsan shelo lishman, that in those cases, the minchas chote and the minchas kenos, if the kamitza is taken shelo lishman, could go in, for example, l'shem nedava, it's done as if it was a nedava, voluntary carbon, o nasan beklias hakometz shelo lishman, or let's say the kometz was placed in the vessel shelo lishman, o holech, or he walked it over, o hikter, or he burned it on the mizbeach shelo lishman, not lishman, o chisha ba'achas me avodos halolu, or he thought in one of these avodos, hareini ovid lishmo v'shelo lishmo. First he had in mind to do it lishmo, and then shelo lishmo. O shelo lishmo v'lishmo, or the reverse order, shelo lishmo v'lishmo. Be'elu shtei menachos. The point of the mission is, in these two cases of mincha, meaning the minchas chote, minchas kenos, psulin, they are disqualified, v'en shirehen ne'acholin, and in such a case it's disqualified, the remainder would not be eaten. V'taima mefarish b'gemara, and the reason for this will be explained in the Gemara. V'hadatana, and the reason why the Mishnah says o shelo lishmo v'lishmo, it has both orders. The lo teima lishmo v'shelo lishmo hu depsula. Don't think that only if it's in the order of lishmo first and then shelo lishmo that it's disqualified. The tafas lashon achron, because we follow the latter language. Avol shelo lishmo v'lishmo lo. But maybe you would think that if it's shelo lishmo first and then lishmo, that is not the case. Kamash molon. So the Mishnah is teaching the afet chilas devar of adam nitzvas islam, that we go in both directions, meaning in both situations we're going to say it's disqualified. And the Gemara says, Lama Lamali lemisna ella. Why does the Mishnah say ella? Listening, it should simply say v'lo alu lebailam l'shem chov. It doesn't satisfy the obligation of the owner. The Gemara is referring to the Mishnah where it says ksheros ella shelo alu lebailam l'shem chov. It says it's kosher, but it doesn't fulfill the obligation of the owner. Simply say v'lo alu lebailam l'shem chova. Rashi explains midikatani ella, from the fact that it says ella mashma dechol dina kamincha ksher. It sounds like it is fully like a kosher mincha ella zeblavad, except for this. This is the only exception, that it doesn't satisfy the obligation of the owner. So what is that teaching us? And the Gemara says, Hakamash Malon, the word Ella is teaching us, Lebailim hudalo alu l'shem chov. It doesn't fulfill the obligation of the owner. Hamincha gufa ksheira, but it is considered a kosher carbon mincha. Va'asr l'shanuye, and further deviations would be prohibited. Rashi explains, Va'asr l'shanuye bashinoy acher. You can't do some other kind of change. Kigon imavar v'kamsa shelo l'shma. For example, let's say he did transgress and he took the kometz shelo l'shma. Asr loses kometz bechli shelo l'shma. It's still forbidden to place the kometz in the vessel shelo l'shma. And the Gemara says, Kid Rava, this follows what Rava said. The Yomar Rava, because Rava said, Ola shashachta shalo lishma. If you have a carbon ola that was slaughtered, not lishma, asr lizrok dama shalo lishma. It's prohibited to then throw the blood shalo lishma. And Ibai say masvar, if you want, we could say this is just logical. Ibai say makra, if you want, we could say there's a source from the pasuk. Ibai say masvar, if you want, we could say it's logical. Mishum demishani bo kolhani lishni bo v'nezel. Just because you made this deviation, you should make more deviations. That doesn't make sense. Ibai say makra. If you want, we can say it's a pasuk, because the pasuk says Motzas fasecha tishmor v'yasisa kasher nadarta l'Hashem Elokecha nadav. It says, do keep your word kasher nadarta, like the oath that you made, but it uses the word nadarta like neder, and then it says nadava, and so the Gemara says nadava nederhu kari le neder v'kari le nadava. It's a nadava. It was a neder, you said at the beginning of the pasuk. It's referred to as a neder, then it's referred to as a nadava. What's going on? Ella, rather it means imkemasha nadarta asisa. If you did what you vowed, Yehei neder, then it will be a neder. V'im lav, and if not, Yehei nedava, it will be a nedava. And Rashi explains nedava bitmiya. That's a question. V'ha neder hu d'chsiv kasher nadarta. It says kasher nadarta in the pasuk. It's a neder. Why does it say nedava? Im kamasher nadarta sisa lishma Yehei neder. If you did what you vowed and you did it lishma, then it's a neder. Kilomar, what that means to say is yotzas yedei nedrecha. You fulfilled your obligation of the neder. V'im lav, and if not, Yehei nedava, then this will be considered a nedava. It'll be considered a donation, independent, so to speak. V'yavi acheres lenidro. He'll have to bring another one to fulfill his neder, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Beis Amid Beis.